that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. So lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Energy Week with George Harvey and the famous Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. Here we are in the studio working with against all odds, I guess. Is it against all odds?
Well, it's against a lot of odds this
There's
morning.
a lot of funny things going on in the studio, but that's okay. Don't
And
worry
at home.
And at home? Okay. Every day I go to the internet, I find what's in the news relating to energy and climate change, and I put together the articles that I think are the most interesting together with links, and post a group of 10 to 15 of them at my blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com, geoharvey.wordpress.com.
And I manipulate the cameras and
He is-
occasionally comment.
Tom is the great manipulator. Okay. So I think we better get out of that mess and start on Thursday, July 28th, which is a week ago today. And this is our first item here comes from a publication called Global Warming. And do we have a title on that, Tom?
Yeah, it's a long title.
Okay.
The Democratic platform vows to meet climate challenge with good paying jobs, cheaper energy from green sources, and national mobilization.
Who could complain about that? We have a picture, by the way.
We do, yeah.
We do. This is a
Yeah,
wind
let's
farm.
get that picture
The
up.
Democrats adopted their party platform at their national convention. I was going to say natural convention. The energy and environment section is entitled Combat Climate Change, Build a Clean Energy Economy and Secure Environmental Justice. It begins with a statement, climate change is an urgent threat and a defining challenge of our time, which of course the Republican Party seems to think is a ridiculous statement. But I will point out that the Defense Department agrees with the Democratic side. They say this is a national security issue that is of great importance.
Well, I got the bulk of their platform right up here in
Okay.
a short form.
Okay.
The first, what do you call an item on a platform?
Plank.
A plank, yeah. The first plank is produce 50% of our energy from clean energy sources within a decade.
Yes.
The second plank, carbon dioxide, methane, and other greenhouse gases should be priced to reflect their negative externalities.
Carbon pricing.
They haven't quite explained how they're going to do that, but they're moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
The third plank is eliminate special tax breaks and subsidies for fossil fuel companies and extend tax incentives for energy efficiency and clean energy.
Yeah.
Who can argue with that?
Well, I want to go back to the second item, which is
Yeah.
the business of the external costs of fossil fuels. People don't understand this. According to Citigroup, I think it was Citigroup. They did a calculation. You know, they're financial advisors. They figured out that it was something on the order of $3 trillion a year. Now, I've seen estimates from 1.7 to $7 trillion a year on the external costs of fossil fuels worldwide, which
That's
is
a lot.
about $250 to $1,000 per person worldwide. And you know that is being, the brunt of that is being borne by Americans and Europeans and Japanese.
In the form of taxes and...
That's right.
Yeah.
And people don't realize they're paying taxes for this. This is showing up in their medical insurance. It's showing up in their medical bills. It is causing a lot of medical problems. It's causing climate change problems. Anybody who's had Lyme disease or has had his life impinged on by Lyme disease is a victim to some extent probably of climate change, because in Vermont we never had Lyme disease.
We've never had one, yeah.
And we do now.
Yeah.
And we're seeing other things too. The whole business of the ghost forests, which we've seen on this.
Well, for historical reasons, the owners of fossil fuels have been getting a free ride
Yeah.
for a century.
For a century. Yeah. We've been subsidizing them for digging for them. We've been subsidizing them because the mine closed. You know, we've got
Well, the
a
next
lot of
one,
money
the
that's
next
going on.
item, which I already
Utility
talked about.
dive is what this comes from. What is the title of this one, Tom?
Oh, we're going to the next one?
Oh, are we?
I
thought you
I
when
still
you
haven't
said next
finished the
one.
planks.
Oh, go ahead, please. I'm sorry. We're back to.
Well, I was talking about reciting this plank because it's pertinent.
Okay.
Eliminate special tax breaks and subsidies for fossil fuel companies.
I think that makes sense. Those tax breaks and subsidies, by the way, are about 5 times as much money as spent on renewable subsidies. And on top of that, much of the renewable subsidy is going toward ethanol.
Well, the money's going to the right people, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I suppose.
Okay, the next one is a good one. Prohibit oil production in the Arctic and off the Atlantic coast.
That makes sense.
And phase down extraction of fossil fuels from our public lands.
Yes.
Okay, the next item. This is a good one. I don't know if they can get away with this one, but this is a good one. Convene a summit of the world's best engineers, climate scientists, policy experts, activists, and indigenous communities to chart a course to solve the climate crisis. Okay, and the last plank is investigate allegations of corporate fraud on the part of fossil fuel companies
Yeah, there's a few
accused
those
of
in
misleading shareholders and the public on the scientific reality of climate change.
there. Yes.
And there's a little bit of an aside here, was also from the article. The platform pointedly mentions twice that Republican President Donald Trump has called climate change a hoax.
Presidential candidate. Please don't call him a president yet.
Presidential nominee.
Yes.
What did I say?
You just said president.
Oh, duh.
Okay.
Presidential.
He says it's a hoax. Well, I don't think Donald Trump is purposely lying. I think he's just too stupid to be able to get it into his head.
That's one.
He may have a good mind. He may, like Idi Amin, have a good mind. But Idi Amin said, "I have a good mind." But Donald Trump is a man who does not know how to use his intelligence, and he makes things up as he goes along.
Well, that seems to be true.
You
You
know.
never know what he's going to say.
No, you don't. Not from one.
I don't
minute
think
to
he
the
even
next.
knows.
I don't think he knows.
Well, let's move along to the next
Okay,
item.
next
here.
item is from Utility Dive.
Yeah, utility dive. Where do you get these things anyhow?
I find them, and I do a bunch of searches on the internet every day.
Heat wave and a storm push power prices above $1,000 a megawatt hour in New York.
Yeah, amid a blistering.
That's
heat
$1 a
wave-
kilowatt hour.
Yeah.
What are we paying? 15 cents?
15. Well, you're paying 15 cents. You don't pay.
I
You
don't
don't buy
pay,
your
no,
own.
well,
I pay 19 cents
19 cents. Okay.
because I buy.
No,
cow
mine's
power.
buried in my rent.
Amid a blistering heat wave and some strong weather, electricity prices in New York soared this week, according to Platts. New York ISO real-time prices went to $800 per megawatt hour, 80 cents per kilowatt hour on Monday afternoon, and Zone A West real-time prices soared to more than $1,500 per megawatt hour, which is $1.50 per kilowatt hour, which, as Tom just pointed out, is roughly 10 times the retail rate in Vermont.
This is all within New York State.
This is all within New York State. That's right.
And a little bit of a takeaway here. The state is looking to create the utility system of the future, in part, to bring on more renewable energy and lower emissions, but also to deal with the rising peak demand that could send customer bills higher, which is what this article is about.
Right. And one way to do that is to get more solar power on the grid, because the heat demand happens usually when the sun's
That's
shining.
exactly what they're going to try and do.
Well, we'll get back to them.
We will, because we're going to be
there's
talking
more
about
going on in
this same article from about 3 or 4 different
Yeah,
viewpoints.
there's a couple of articles that we've got that we just hit over and over again this week.
Well, they're
Okay.
very timely. That's why we're getting them.
Yep. Our next item is from Clean Technica.
Okay, China logs 22 gigawatts of grill-connected solar PV in the first half of 2016.
Amazing.
That's a lot.
It is. China has installed 22 gigawatts of grill-connected solar PV in the first half of 2016, according to PV Tech. China's National Energy Administration announced at an industry event in Beijing that the country had logged 22 gigawatts of grid-connected solar power in the first half of the year, with 11.3 gigawatts in June alone. Now, a gigawatt of solar is not a gigawatt of nuclear.
Yeah, right.
So
Because it's intermittent.
It's intermittent. So what we should do is say that a gigawatt of solar is probably a quarter of a gigawatt, maybe even 20% of a gigawatt.
That's pretty conservative, I think.
Depending upon where it's
yeah,
put.
Yeah.
So 22 gigawatts of solar PV is like 4.5 gigawatts of nuclear, which
Okay,
is
but it's still a lot.
it's still a lot. You know, it's going to be 7 times what the Vermont Yankee nuclear power plant was, perhaps 4.5 times the size of a modern nuclear power plant. And this stuff is just going up. It's like, as they say, growing like topsy.
It is that. Well, last year they put up 7.7 gigawatts. This year they're doing 22
In half the year.
in half a year. And their cumulative installed capacity at this time, solar, is 50 gigawatts.
Amazing. Isn't that amazing?
It is.
Yeah.
They're going nuts out
Okay.
there.
We are up to Friday, July 29th. If you want to find one of these articles, you can go to my blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com. Click on the date of the article, which is, there's a calendar there that you can go to.
Some of these are well worth looking at.
Yeah, they are.
They're far more detailed than we could talk about on the
much.
show.
Our next one is from Syracuse.com, and we have a picture on this one too, Tom.
Yeah, we do. Let's get this one
In
up.
fact, it's sitting there behind us. There you go.
There we go.
This is the 9 Mile Point plant in Oswego County. What's the title?
New York's historic bailout of nuke plants explained. Okay, and it needs explanation.
It does.
Why ratepayers could pony up $7 billion.
$7 billion? New York energy regulators are poised to approve the nation's first clean air subsidies for nuclear plants, a controversial move that would guarantee about $7 billion in new revenue to 3 upstate nuclear plants threatening to close. And in fact, we will get back to this because that was acted on by the legislature. It was approved, and it looks like that money is going to get drained out of people's pockets.
Well, there is an explanation here.
Yes.
And there's actually a couple of explanations, but this is the one they mentioned. The plants are providing 20% of all electricity generated in New York. That's
Yes,
a lot.
That's a lot.
If they retire, much of that capacity might be replaced by carbon-spewing peaking plants that burn natural gas.
And the energy from those peaking plants is extremely
Very expensive.
Yeah, and much more expensive than the energy from solar.
Cuomo and energy officials say they want to keep the nukes running during a transition period while large amounts of renewable power sources like wind and solar are developed.
Yes,
And this is anticipated to be 12 years.
that's what they're anticipating. That means
Everything takes longer than that.
everything takes longer. The interesting thing about this is, in 12 years, they could almost replace those nuclear power plants with nuclear power plants. And solar and wind go up about 5 times as fast. I don't know how long it would take to replace this with wind and solar, but I think 12 years is excessive.
Part of the problem here, and they didn't mention it in the article, is the infrastructure in western New York State isn't sufficient for them to wheel enough power in from the rest of the state
Right.
to overcome what they might be losing if they close these plants.
Yes, but they can produce the power locally using solar.
Well, that's what they're looking at.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be cheaper and more reliable.
Well,
probably.
at this point, it's cheaper to put in solar with batteries than it is to put in nuclear. We're seeing this
we
come
know
up
that.
over
Yeah,
and over
we've
again.
talked that.
And
So-
by the way, if in case anybody is interested in checking that out, Lazard Associates is probably the most widely quoted place for the information on the cost of what they call the LCOE, the levelized cost of electricity, which is the cost.
That's the real cost.
That's the real cost. It includes tax
Everything.
money that's going in, the whole thing, except that with nuclear, it doesn't include the potential cost of Price Anderson or the cost of dealing with the waste. However, the cost of nuclear right now is more than double the cost of solar.
Is it really?
Yep.
More than
And
double.
More than double.
Wow.
And the cost of coal is even higher because coal is so polluting. And the cost of the cheapest electricity we've got is from wind, by far,
Mm-hmm.
the cheapest. Solar is approximately the same as
Onshore wind.
onshore wind. Solar is approximately the same as natural gas.
Okay.
So a little bit lower than
The
natural
times
gas.
they are
The
changing.
times are changing. Yeah, solar is marginally lower than natural gas this year. It'll probably be higher next year. Okay, should we move on from that?
Yeah, the
Okay.
next article is great. It's long and in depth.
Oh, wow. And it's from the BBC. But what's the title?
Hinkley Point, which we talked about,
Many
nuclear
times.
plant delay is bonkers, says the union.
Bonkers. That is bonkers, bonkers. Plans to build the first UK nuclear power plant in 20 years are unexpectedly delayed when the UK's government put a final decision off until autumn. The EDF, which is financing much of the $18 billion project, approved the funding and wants to go ahead. They voted this at a meeting, but immediately the UK's government said it needed to review the project.
Now, EDF is Electricité de France,
Yep.
and they're a contractor in this project, or
Yeah.
a potential
I
contractor.
never try to pronounce French. The French always get mad when I try to pronounce French. But go ahead, Tom.
Well, the downside here, and this is what's really killing it if it gets killed, Britain has committed to pay a price more than twice the current market levels for power generated by the plant over 35 years.
Yes.
Now, that doesn't
The
sound...
plant is going to get double the wholesale electric rate for 35 years, guaranteed. And even at that, they had trouble getting investors. They had to go to China.
Well, they're still having trouble. They still haven't resolved this.
They still have not resolved it. And what happened was that Theresa May, who is the new prime minister, who is cautious about things and doesn't like suddenly, making a decision based on whatever somebody else had decided, wants to examine this. And she had been opposed to the project, or I should say questioned the project in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So she may just say, no, we're not going to do that. We'll have to see what happens.
Well, we've talked about this before, and I have said there's something to this that we don't know is going on.
I think that's probably true. It's the only explanation I can come up with. Anyway.
Well, let's move along.
Okay. Clean Technica provided us with our next item. What is this?
World's largest carbon producers face human rights abuse allegations.
Wow.
Now, this is interesting
It
because
sure
it's
is.
not about their employees, it's about the people.
People. The world's 47 largest investment-owned fossil fuel and cement producers have been formally accused of human rights abuses. This week, the fossil fuel and cement producers named in the complaint were sent copies of it by the Philippines Commission on Human Rights. They have 45 days to respond. This is the Philippines, this is the government of the Philippines acting officially on behalf of the people of its country,
Exactly.
who it says are being abused by these 47 largest fossil fuel and cement producers.
What, in their own words, is human rights violations or threats of violations are resulting from the impacts of climate change.
It's interesting to me. We had an item months ago, and I don't know if you remember this, but do you happen to remember the item on the young woman who had invented a way of making bricks without heat?
Yeah, I do.
This was really interesting because it occurs to me that maybe you could make cement the same way. She had a form which was brick-shaped,
Yeah.
and she would put sand in the form and then pour in nutrient-rich water and microbes.
And she let the microbes do the work.
She let the microbes extract carbon dioxide from the air, and I'm sorry, it was in the liquid. It was calcium in the liquid. It was carbon dioxide from the air,
Okay,
which they combined with calcium in the liquid
okay,
to produce bricks.
okay.
And because basically this was kind of like seashells, a lot of other things that are made from calcium carbonate.
Cement making is very energy intensive.
Very.
They
And
take
so is
the
brick making.
they take the limestone
Yep.
and they basically heat it up until it turns into calcium carbonate that they can use.
Yes. And these are, the amount of our energy globally that goes into cement making is huge.
I guess basically what they're doing is driving off all the water
Yep.
from the calcium carbonate, and then when you use it as cement, you put the water back.
That's right.
And it turns back
these
into
are called-
rock.
Yes, these are called waters of hydration. It's a really interesting chemical process. And it's a similar process with plaster of Paris, and you do the same thing.
Doing the same thing.
But that's when you have a cement kiln. What they do is they put rocks in, and the rocks are heated until they just reduce to dust.
Yeah.
And steam is driven off, and then when you combine water with whatever is there, it makes the rocks again, just slightly different looking rocks. Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, this is an interesting one, and it's local.
VTdigger.org provided us with this.
Windham County Renewables to get a boost via Vermont Yankee.
There you go. The Vermont Clean Energy Development Fund, drawing from cash paid to the state by Yankee owner Energy, has given $400,000 to the Windham Regional Commission to develop a program over the next several months. Officials say grants will be geared towards small-scale renewable projects in the county.
You said the word grants, didn't you?
Said grants. I said
Yeah,
grants.
so the people that are looking at this, that have homes,
Yeah.
want to start keeping abreast of this, because there's money out there.
There's money out there, and it's going to small-scale renewable projects, but I don't know the ins and outs of what
They haven't, well, what types of projects might benefit have not yet been defined.
Right.
Okay.
So we have to find that out. And
But what they're looking at is grants are expected to start at about $10,000.
cool.
And the projects could include heat generation, electricity generation, and transportation-related initiatives.
There you go. Things that we need
So
to do.
there's a lot of local money here. I mean, $400,000 is a lot.
Well, it's not a huge amount.
Well, it's spread county-wide, but
Yeah.
still,
It's what, $10 a person?
it's not going to go to everybody.
No, it's not. It's
It's-
going to go to those few people
Who
wa-
qualify.
Watch this show.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Keep
There are other sources for the information. Probably most people would get it.
if you're
would get
watching
it.
this show, keep abreast of this.
Yes.
Because it could make the difference between having solar and not having
Yeah.
solar on your house.
Our next item is from Vermont Public Radio.
Uh-huh.
Aha.
The PSB sets interim sound standards for wind power.
This is interesting. The Vermont Public Service Board issued interim noise standards for commercial and small-scale wind projects in accord with legislation that directed the Public Service Board to issue interim rules. For commercial wind projects, the board set a limit of 45 decibels outside of a building and 30 decibels on the inside. Now,
Those numbers are low.
those numbers are low. 30
Last-
decibels on the
While
inside.
I was doing this last night,
Mhm.
I took out my sound meter.
Yes,
In my room, no traffic,
yes,
30 dB.
30.
The only thing was making any noise at all was the air conditioner.
Air conditioner,
Yeah.
okay. So the amount that would be added to that by having a wind turbine at the limit, the absolute limit of what is allowed.
I'd have to turn the air conditioner off.
Well, you'd have to, you would to hear it. And 45 decibels outside of a building, that, I think what they mean is 45 decibels at the building. But this is not an unachievable goal by any stretch of the imagination. 45 decibels means
That's
you'd
what we're
hear it.
talking about right now.
Yeah,
We're
probably.
talking at that level right
Well,
now.
we're probably a lot louder.
Probably louder. Yeah, I'm
But,
louder.
38 decibels. I followed a wind turbine manufacturer in Maine called
Uh-huh.
Tiger Research, and they have a little wind turbine that homeowners might want to put in for themselves. It's 1.5 kilowatts.
Okay.
And that wind turbine at 200 feet, the EPA measured at 38 decibels, which is about as loud as somebody whispering in a library.
Mhm.
And the first time the EPA went to measure it, the test failed. No, the wind turbine didn't fail. The test failed because the wind turbine sound was drowned out by the wind blowing through a field of grass.
Okay.
Okay. Are you afraid of this? We're up to Saturday, July 30th. And we have
Okay.
a picture for this
Yeah,
one
we got a
too.
picture. I'll bring this one up.
This is an uncredited picture. I don't know who provided this. It came with the article. And it didn't say.
Just
So-
says a wind farm in the UK.
That's what it says. Kensington, Chelsea, and Westminster Today produced the article.
A quarter of the UK electricity now comes from renewable sources.
A quarter.
Yeah.
In 2015, renewable energy provided 25% of the UK's electricity, up from 20% the previous year. Once considered the lifeblood of this country, Coal is now marginally behind gas as the dominant source of electricity in the UK, with renewable energy sources filling the gap it leaves behind. Now, there have been a couple of months in the last year when the amount of electricity from renewable sources exceeded the amount from coal. And this is something most people, if you think that renewable energy is more expensive than coal, you should think again, because in April, in March in the United States, according to the EIA, renewable power provided 19.3% of our electricity, by my calculations. In April,
Here in America.
Actually, it was 19. It was 19 in April. April, March it was 19. April it was 19.3. My calculations. Platts did a more careful set of calculations, and they did something that I don't know what they did, but the figure they published was 19.8%, which is a little bit higher than nuclear produced in 2013, 2014 period. And this is growing, and it's almost caught up with nuclear. My expectation is that within a year we're going to see at least 1 month come by that has renewable energy outperforming nuclear, and coal is crashing.
Sell your coal stock.
Two years ago, coal was producing half of our electricity.
Trump loves coal, though.
Yeah, he loves it. In March and April, it was less than 25%. So it had dropped by 50% over. Its production of electricity had dropped by 50% over 2 years. And if that continues, it's going to be below 20%. It's probably going to be around 17% by this time next year.
In a year.
Yeah, in a year, yeah. And
nuclear. And most of the coal these days is mountaintop renewal.
It is so disgusting. And the nuclear industry is barely growing, but the renewables industries are growing. So we should go on so we can keep up with
closer
our
to
clock.
home.
7 days brought us this next one.
Dunn's new wind stance draws criticism.
Oh boy,
and surprising praise.
Okay. Now, this was something which is kind of near and dear to my heart because I have my own personal experience with this.
Okay.
The Democratic gubernatorial candidate, Matt Dunn, on Friday put out a new wind turbine siting policy statement. Quote, "If a town says no to large industrial wind project, I would use all the power of the governor's office to ensure that this is the end of the project," he said in a statement. "I will ensure that no means no." Now, this is one of the things that I love about politics in Vermont.
Okay.
I read that while I was doing the blog on Saturday morning. I read that at about 5 minutes to 6.
Okay.
So I stopped everything. I stopped absolutely everything, and I worked until about 5 minutes before 7. Sorry, I've got this wrong. I saw it at 5 minutes to 7, and I worked until 5 minutes to 8.
Okay.
Writing an email to Matt Dunn. And I sent this thing to him saying, we've got a problem of abuse in Vermont. I'm talking about something that is like child abuse, like domestic violence, except that it's abuse of towns. Whole communities are being abused, I think.
Well, if you're a beginner, it's very easy to get on a soapbox and convince the residents of a town that this is a bad idea.
I have a little story here, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
Little story, folks.
A little story. I went to school at Pratt Institute in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And Pratt Institute was in the middle of what in those days some people who knew about slums said was the worst slum in the United States. Kind of on the edge of it. But
I think they're stretching it, but...
Maybe. The area which was to the west and south of Pratt Institute had beautiful, well-built brownstone houses.
I remember
on tree-lined streets and Washington Avenue, places like that. Nice streets. And,
nice houses.
Yeah, nice houses. They had been built for prosperous people, architects and doctors and lawyers and people who owned prosperous businesses and so forth. But in the 1930s, realtors got the idea, why would you sell one house at full value when you could sell 20 houses at half value and get 10 times as much money? Because they don't lose money when when the houses are sold at a loss. They
Right.
get
And they still get their commission.
they get their commission. You sell 2 houses at half price, you get the same amount of money as selling 1 house at full price. So they had a deal where they had 2 offices for the realty. One was the white office, and the other was the colored office.
Oh boy.
And when a white person walked into the white office and said, "I want to sell my home," the realtor running the white office would say, "Oh, we have to ask this as a matter of form. Would you mind selling this to a colored family?"
Uh-huh.
Inevitably, somebody would say yes. So when that happened, the listing went to the colored office.
Sure.
So the colored office goes out looking for somebody who wants to buy a house in a nice neighborhood. And the person they would find would be a colored doctor or university professor or whatever.
Yeah.
A person who in every respect would fit into that neighborhood except for the color
For the
of
color
skin.
of their skin. Yeah.
And the moment there was a closing on that sale, the salesman from the white office would go running through the neighborhood saying, you gotta sell, the sky is falling, a colored office, a colored family's moving into the neighborhood, your property is gonna lose 90% of its value.
What's the name for that practice?
It's called blockbusting.
Blockbusting.
It is
Yeah.
absolutely illegal, but it wasn't in those days. And they would scare the blazes out of people, just scare them to death, so that there was a reason to frighten them. Oh, sorry about that one.
How did this get up there?
I just changed it back. They would scare people to death because they wanted them to sell those houses without thinking about it.
Sure.
And when they did, the houses were sold at half price or whatever. And the people were so grateful that they had been saved by that realtor who had told them about the danger that was coming.
Yeah.
And they didn't think for a minute, many of them, that if they just looked at these people and what they really were, they would say, they're just like us, except for the color of their skin.
Yeah.
Why should we object to that?
Yeah.
And you had Italians and Jews and Germans and all kinds of people living there. They lived with each other.
Mm-hmm. So this is analogous to what's going on with wind power.
With wind power, you have people racing through communities saying, if you let this wind turbine be built, it's going to destroy the value of your property. Well, okay, let's look at this rationally and see, does it? No, it doesn't. I mean, there have been huge studies done for the state of Massachusetts. The one that was done by Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratories and the University of Connecticut said, well, it might change the value of your property upwards a little bit, but it does decrease your taxes. It is absolutely appalling, the kinds of scare tactics that are being used by people who are trying to frighten people for whatever reason they're trying to do it.
Yeah.
Which I think in many cases is just personal aggrandizement. The idea that they can get some kind of power out of exercising control over people by rendering them incapable of thinking for themselves. Okay.
I just read something yesterday. We've
Let me continue.
finished.
Okay.
Well, you're on a roll.
I'm on a roll. The point is, I sent an email to Matt Dunn at 8:05.
Okay, you were
He
starting
is
to
a
tell us
gubernatorial candidate
Yep.
for governor.
Yep.
And he was on the phone to talk with me in 15 minutes.
No kidding.
Absolutely.
that. What did he say?
Well, he and I talked about this, and I said, we've got people who are scaring people. This is abuse. This is like domestic abuse, except it's community abuse. They are abusing people. They are making them afraid. They're making it hard for them to sleep at night. They're making them sick and calling it wind turbine syndrome. The thing that he told me was he was aware of that.
Uh-huh.
He doesn't want that to continue.
Okay.
But he does want the communities, if they're going to make a rational decision, to make their own decision. Can I disagree with that?
Well, the only problem there is the decision this one community makes is going to affect the community next
You're
door.
absolutely right. It's something that we have to be very circumspect about.
Yeah.
Now, of course, what happened was stuff that we will see later, because he lost the endorsement of Bill McKibben and other.
Yep.
But we'll get to that.
We'll get to that.
Okay.
I was just going to say that we've talked about wind turbine syndrome here. I just read something yesterday. It was about Wi-Fi.
Yes.
And it was all the same things that wind turbine syndrome is going to do
Well,
to you.
you know, there was an interesting one about high tension power lines in Sweden.
Okay.
And the Swedes actually passed a law saying that children could not be raised within, I think it was a kilometer of high tension power lines. It might have been half a kilometer. But the reason was because they could show statistically that children who were close to these power lines were getting cancer.
No kidding.
Really?
Wow.
And so they said, well, we're not going to allow that. But of course, what happened was they stopped allowing it, but they also started getting very serious about research. And they found the cause.
Okay.
It was the defoliants being used under the high tension power lines.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So was it electricity? That's what people were saying at the time.
Well, I think I mentioned this on the show. Back in 1910, there was people saying that there was going to be electricity leaking out of the outlets you were having installed in your house.
And actually, if you really want to get down to it, there probably is.
Well, it probably is, but it's microscopic. But yeah,
you'd be hard
There'd be
pressed.
some.
And I've known people who have said, I can feel the electricity, in the power line. I can't say that they're wrong, but
Maybe they can feel it.
Maybe they can, but we've got to provide for people's heat and transportation and light, and so we have to be careful about that kind of thing.
Well, now we're ready for
We're
some
at
modern
Sunday.
art.
We're at Sunday, and here's
Let's
the
see
modern
art.
There you
There
go.
we go.
And this is from Clean Technica.
Air pollution linked to brain disorders and diminished cognitive ability.
Yeah, if you can't.
So is beer.
What?
So is beer.
Yeah. If you can't think on a Sunday morning, you can blame it on the fact that you commuted to work in traffic all week. The American Psychological Association links air pollution to brain disorders and diminished cognitive abilities in a report that links air pollution to increased depression, educational troubles for children, and degenerative problems. Quote, now the evidence is mounting that dirty air is bad for your brain as well, end quote.
Well, we've talked about that several times,
And
really.
that is a picture of neural connections of the brain. And
That's a brain.
That's, I don't think that's a real picture. I'll bet it's a computer-generated thing. Okay. Fortunately, we can get rid of that picture because we're up to Monday, August 1st, and we've got a new picture coming. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Well, let's put you on here.
This is from Clean Technica also.
Okay.
I'm sorry, this is from Climate Central.
Climate Central.
Yeah.
China's cold peak hailed as a turning point. I'll put it up.
Well, okay.
Look at that.
Good
Look at
news,
that.
yeah. That's not fog, folks.
That's coal.
That is
Pollution.
air pollution from coal-burning power plants. And if you live in Vermont, you don't see that. But you get
But it's there.
It's there. It's just not quite that thick. The global battle against climate change passed a historic turning point, according to senior economists. China, the world's biggest polluter, more than tripled its coal use from 2000 to 2013, emitting billions of tonnes here, this is metric tons, of carbon dioxide, but the coal consumption peaked in 2014, much earlier than expected, and began falling.
So the takeaway is that China is doing something about this.
China is doing something about this. And in 2014, President Barack Obama got together with his counterpart in China, who I forget the name of, and they came up with
Smith.
Is it really?
No.
I didn't know that. And they came up with an agreement that the United States would limit its carbon pollution, and China would start reducing its carbon emissions by 2035. My suspicion is it's going to happen a little bit before that.
It's got to be done by 2030.
Well, it does, but
It really
they're reducing their coal emissions already.
There is a takeaway here.
Yeah.
This change in China can now be seen as a permanent trend, not a blip.
Yes.
Due to major shifts in the Chinese economy and a crackdown on pollution.
Yes.
So they're definitely doing something about it.
Yes. Okay. Our next item, which is also, I want to get this, I want to make sure that I'm on the right date here, from August 1st, Monday, August 1st, is from CNews Renewables, and we've
We
got
got the
another
right one,
picture
yeah.
there.
Got a graph to look at here.
Yeah, we do.
Well, let's put it up.
Much prettier than pollution. Much easier to understand than that modern art we had.
Now they're talking about the world.
Yeah.
Renewables deliver 13.8%
Right.
of global energy in 2014.
Global renewable energy production increased by 2.6 percent points between 2013 and 2014 and reached a share of 13.8% in total primary energy supply.
So it's more than that now.
Yeah. International Energy Agency said last week annual growth rates in 1990 to 2014 have been especially strong for PV and wind power at 46.2%. That is a lot for an annual growth rate. And
That's a substantial growth rate.
that's not growing like Topsy. That's Topsy is left way behind,
behind.
this one, and 24.3% respectively, which is also faster than Topsy. This is an astonishing growth, and the image that you see there shows that renewable energy supply is about 4 times as much as nuclear.
Nuclear is the yellow,
Nuclear is the yellow, yeah.
and the green is
The green is
what
renewable,
we're looking
which is
at.
it is mostly something and waste. It's hard for me to read this,
And I can't read it on mine either.
but hydro is 2.4%, and I'm sorry, biofuels and waste, which would mean wood. Wood provides an amazing amount of the fuel that we use worldwide, and that I think has to be reduced. But the other renewables, wind and
in much of the world, they do all their cooking on wood, right in a living room. Well, they only have one room.
yeah, and there are ways of dealing with rocket stoves, which we have talked about.
We've
Really
talked about rocket
reduce
stoves, yep.
pollution from that. We should probably get on to our next item, which comes from Odessa American.
Where the heck do you get these things?
I
Odessa's in Texas.
I know that.
This is about Massachusetts.
I know that. But the people in Texas are really interested in wind power because they've got so much wind power in Texas.
Well, lawmakers, Massachusetts lawmakers,
Yes.
end session with late deals on energy.
The Massachusetts legislature passed a compromise energy bill and sent it to the governor. The bill would require utilities to solicit long-term contracts with offshore wind farm developers for at least 1,600 megawatts in the next 10 years and encourage delivery of larger supplies of Canadian hydropower and other renewables. Now, 1,600 megawatts of wind power is significantly more than the amount of power coming from the Pilgrim nuclear power plant. And
Okay.
and if this is positioned properly, it's going to be a complementary thing in which the different power plants reinforce each other's output so that you don't have lulls in the production.
Well, from the article, it says the measure would authorize the largest procurement of renewable energy in history of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Right.
The fight goes on for solar, greater energy efficiency, and to stop more gas pipelines.
Yes. Now, I'll point out that this 1,600 megawatts plus this another 1,600 megawatts of other renewables, which can be met by hydro from Canada, even that combination is not as big as the biggest solar plant that is being proposed right now. Which is,
I think we're going to talk about that one. Yeah,
we might just do that. We are up to Tuesday.
It's coming up real quick, isn't it?
Second, that's right, it is.
What world climate can expect from U.S. presidential choices?
This year, every vote
here.
is a vote for or against climate change, says Nick Stockton of Wired.com. Citizens of the United States have to make a real choice about climate this year. Our votes may determine how the country addresses the world climate for decades. That chart shows climate change.
No, it's a hoax.
It's Donald Trump says this isn't happening. Oh, I'm sorry. He says just weather. Don't worry about it. Just weather. Lyme disease, just weather. Yeah.
A little bit of history here.
Yeah.
Climate change and politics met on February 8th, 1965, to the day,
Yeah.
when President Lyndon Johnson addressed Congress on the danger of releasing too much carbon in the atmosphere.
Well, by
That's back
golly.
1965.
1965.
The issue simmered through Carter, Reagan, and Bush 1. By the mid-1990s, climate science and climate denial had seeped deeply enough into U.S. politics that President Bill Clinton signed the Kyoto Protocol, and the Republican Congress subsequently refused to ratify it.
Well,
In the
what can you say?
2000s, Bush 2 made denial mainstream, and Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth did the same thing for climate science. Mainstream, but never as important as the economy, foreign policy, abortion, the economy, religious freedom, drugs,
Right.
and the economy.
Right? And that image, by the way, is not from Mashable, who's got the name in the lower right. It's from an organization whose name is in the lower left. It's called NOAA, the National
yeah.
well, it's the federal government. Sorry,
National Oceanic
Oceanic and Atmospheric
Administration.
I think that's right.
NOAA.
NOAA, not NOAH, not the guy with a boat.
Yeah, and we got a quick comparison of the two leading candidates.
Yep.
Trump has a history of engaging in conspiracy theories. In that vein, he's described climate change as a hoax, mythical, non-existent, a con job, and the last word I
If
can't
there is a
talk about
con
on
job
TV.
in this country, it is.
It's him.
Oh my gosh! Oh, he's appalling.
He even said that the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive.
How does this work? It's like the guy who told me that the business of putting PVs on your rooftop is socialist. How do you deal with that? You're buying your own stuff. You're making your own power. It's power being put into the hands of ordinary people, and they're saying that it's designed to produce a world government. Oh, it's
boy.
appalling. Our
Well,
next item
here's
is-
what Clinton says about
Oh,
it.
okay.
It's just for comparison.
Yep.
We've got to be equal opportunity here.
Yep.
What Clinton is saying, I believe in science. I believe climate change is real and that we can save our planet while creating millions of good-paying, clean energy jobs.
Yep.
I am proud we shaped a global climate agreement. Now we have to hold every country accountable to their commitments, including ourselves.
Yes.
Can't argue with that.
Yes. Our next item is from WSKG News.
And we're back on the nuclear subsidy.
That's right.
New York adopts nuclear subsidy that could save power plants.
The Clean Energy Standard, part of the initiative to double the New York renewable energy, providers and cut carbon emissions by 40% by 2030, was approved unanimously at a meeting in Albany Monday. The 4 nuclear power plants were added to CES because they produce a third of the state's carbon dioxide-free energy.
I can't argue with it. You know,
I can't
I
argue
don't
with
think
the
it's a good
facts.
idea, but they don't. They're painted in a corner.
Yeah, they're painted into a corner. And you know, the thing that struck me about this is that those nuclear power plants are holding the state of New York hostage.
They are.
This is
It's blackmail.
blackmail. Okay, should we go on?
I think we should.
Okay, WCAX provided us with the next one.
Dunn loses endorsement from environmental activists.
Wow. Vermont gubernatorial candidate Matt Dunn's renewable energy position, proposing to leave wind and solar siting questions to the local community, actually it was wind, lost him powerful endorsement. Bill McKibben, co-founder of 350.org, is no longer endorsing him and has given his endorsement to Sue Minter instead. Now,
Well, what McKibben explains his position. Shifting one's position on a key issue like wind power at the last minute, especially once early voting is well underway, seems to me a poor practice.
well, I don't think Matt Dunn really regarded this as shifting his position.
Well, apparently he didn't,
Yeah.
but it looks like that.
Yeah, it sure looks like it. I think it was a poor choice of things to do, but I think when he explains everything completely,
Yeah.
he told me he thought the anti-wind activists would not like his overall position. The people who want to take advantage of this to prevent wind turbines from being installed would not like it. I think he made a mistake. Maybe he thinks he made a mistake. But, I told some people I still think he's a viable candidate. Our next item is from Wednesday, August 3rd, Power Technology.
Now, this is an interesting one, and we mentioned this already.
Yep.
But we didn't mention it by name. Ukraine explores a 4-gigawatt solar project within the Chernobyl exclusion zone.
4 gigawatts?
That's pretty big.
This is huge.
That's pretty big. It will be the largest solar project in the world.
Right. Once completed, the plant will be the largest solar project in the world.
Didn't I just say that?
Yes, you did. Aside from guards and workers who manage roadblocks and barriers, the zone has been barren and uninhabited for 30 years. They've got all kinds of animals in there and plants, some of which are a little bit strange.
I guess I heard this number, but I didn't realize it till last night. The plant's meltdown led to the deaths of an estimated 100,000 people.
Well, you get different numbers from different organizations. Okay? So yeah, somebody estimated 100,000. I got an email that said coal has killed hundreds of thousands of people, but nuclear is really safe. It only killed 17 in the explosion at Chernobyl.
Oh, is that all?
And what? Okay, the nuclear industry at large says, well, really it was more like 87 or 83 or 79 or some number that's below 100, and they list them by name. And of course, they're listing the people who were killed by the explosion and then subsequently had radiation poisoning on their death certificates.
Huh?
That's the people who were killed at Chernobyl, according to some people in the nuclear industry. Now, the Torch report said it was 4,000.
Okay.
And the Chernobyl report said it was 4,000. The Torch report, as I recall, said 24,000. They were objecting to this statistical stuff that was done. I've seen numbers as high as 1 million. Nobody really knows. Okay?
The only thing we do know is it was bad news.
It was bad news.
Bad news.
And nobody's living in that exclusion zone except for a few people who just say, I don't care.
I was wondering when I was reading this, how are they going to get a crew in there to put these things up?
They just take them in and put them up.
They're going to be wearing nuclear
I don't know
suits
what
or
they're
something?
going to do. I don't know what they're going to do.
Well, we got a nice picture coming up.
We
here,
do,
so
and this is
take a look
C
at
News
that.
Renewables. This is really fun, I think.
Well, this is local.
Yeah, it is.
That's Block Island.
Yep. From C News Renewables. What do you got for a title on this, Tom?
U.S.'s first offshore wind farm begins the turbine installation.
Yeah, this.
It's going, folks.
Yeah.
They're working on
They
it
tweeted
right now.
this picture.
Huh?
They tweeted this picture. It came on Twitter.
Uh-huh.
The turbine installation has started on the 30-megawatt Block Island project off the coast of Rhode Island, the U.S. first offshore wind farm. The developer, Deepwater Wind, said on Twitter that the first tower section has been put atop one of the foundations. You see the picture of it happening right there.
Right there.
The components for the rest of the turbines are all on hand. They can just go ahead with this.
Now, we've seen this ship before.
Yeah.
We saw it sideways on. This is looking at the stern.
This thing is huge.
It's quite a machine.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you need to put up a turbine
Yep.
is on that ship.
Yep.
Plus room for crew.
Yep. Who live aboard. And if you look at that thing, I don't know how tall that ship is, but my guess is that the superstructure on it is probably 6 stories, which means
Easily.
the whole ship
Easily.
has got to be at least 10,
Yep.
and that doesn't include the stilts that are holding it out of the water. So if you're up on that heliport, you're probably 16 stories off the water.
Be a long dive.
A long dive. I don't think I would attempt it. But they're moving ahead. And we'll have more
Takeaway here is
information.
the company recently said the wind park remained on schedule to be fully built this summer and commissioned in the autumn.
Yep.
Wow.
Now we've got 2 items from Vermont Biz. And why don't you just read the titles of these and I'll read
Both
through
of them, or
yeah, both of them.
At once?
Well, you read the title of the first and I'll
Yeah.
read my thing. And
Dunn unveils plan to tackle climate change.
Matt Dunn, Democratic candidate for governor of Vermont, unveiled a plan to tackle climate change and secure the state's clean energy future. Quote, climate change is the most significant threat to our planet and even in the short term will fundamentally harm an environment. Collectively, we can solve this problem, end quote. Basically, he told me when he called me that he was going to clarify his position. And I think that without taking anything back, what he told me clarified the position. Why don't we go on to the
Well, I
next?
looked at his plan,
Yeah,
and it generally is a good plan.
I like it. But go to the next one also.
Okay, Minter receives endorsement from Vermont conservation voters.
Right. At a press conference at the Vermont State House, Sue Minter was surrounded by environmental advocates to receive the endorsement of the Vermont conservation voters in her race for governor. Minter reiterated her commitment to Vermont's bold goal to reach 90% renewable energy by 2050 and deal with climate change. So they have taken, a number of people have taken their endorsement of Matt Dunn away from him and given it to Sue Minter.
Well, yeah. What, real quick one about Matt's plan.
Yeah.
It includes strategies for protecting our drinking water,
Yes.
fighting for Lake Champlain,
Right.
which needs fighting,
Yep.
really, halting investments in new fossil fuel infrastructure,
I got it.
divesting from fossil fuels, banning taxpayer-funded state purchases of heating oil from ExxonMobil. Now, that's a biggie.
I don't know.
You can't buy
I
the
don't know.
state.
I don't know if they can actually do that. That might. I don't know. That might be a bill of attainder.
Well, that's what he's talking about, anyhow.
Yeah.
And creating 100 million, 100 M,
100 million.
100 million green. It can't be 100 million
100 million what?
green jobs.
Not 100 million green jobs.
Yeah.
Not in Vermont.
Must be 100,000.
100,000. It's
100
easy to
M.
believe that you could create 100,000 green jobs in Vermont, even though the state only has about 600,000 people in it, because there's so many things that qualify.
I got it wrong. I didn't read the whole sentence. Creating $100 million green jobs fund.
Oh, there you go.
Or maybe $100,000. It's 100 M.
It's 100 million. They don't use Roman
To
numerals
increase the
anymore.
energy efficiencies of apartment and commercial buildings.
Yeah, this
Okay.
includes everything from installing windows and insulation to
Yeah.
putting up solar
Weatherization.
panels, installing batteries.
Yep.
There's a lot of stuff that's involved
It's
here.
an omnibus thing.
Yeah, there's a lot involved. And what I was saying before, it's probably not easy to believe that 100,000 jobs could be involved.
No,
But
no, it's 100. It's dollars.
Yeah.
I didn't even see the dollar sign. It's a green jobs
that
fund.
happens. Well, I think we're approaching the end of our hour.
Pretty close to it.
Pretty
We got about
close.
2 minutes left on.
Well,
according to that clock.
that clock is off by a minute because we started.
We started late.
A little late.
Yeah.
We were having trouble at the start, but I
Well, it's
think
going to be an interesting race. I mean, basically, all three candidates, pretty good candidates, I think.
3 candidates
For governor.
Governor.
Yeah.
I like Matt Dunn. I like Sue Minter,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not 100% certain of how I'm going to vote. I saw Matt Dunn and Sue Minter and Peter Galbraith talk, all three of them in Brattleboro,
Uh-huh.
and I liked Matt Dunn best of the three.
From what I've heard from Galbraith, I agree with everything except his stance on wind.
Yes,
But he's
well,
unalterably opposed to wind.
he's unalterably opposed to wind power, and
He can't say wind power. He always says industrial wind.
Yeah, and I'm not sure. Is he against large solar projects?
He's not that I know of come out on. solar.
Well, there are a lot of people who don't want any solar projects of upwards of what you could put in your backyard or
Yeah.
on your roof.
Yeah.
And they haven't come up with a plan of how to implement that, because we're not going to get 100% of roofs covered with solar power. And the U.S. Department of Energy says that if we covered all of them, we'd get about 50% of our current energy demand.
Well,
But our
ugliness
energy
is in
demand's
the
gonna
eye
go up.
of the beholder.
Huh?
Ugliness is in the eye of the
It sure
beholder.
is. You know, I
you
know a
drive
lot
up
of-
Route 5, you see a farm's got solar panels in the field. Is that ugly?
Well, to me, I spent half my childhood in Illinois.
Yeah.
And I'm really accustomed to driving down a road and seeing corn.
Yeah.
I always thought corn was pretty ghastly. I'd rather see solar panels. At least they're not going to have miles and miles and miles and miles and miles of cornfields. replaced by the same
By
amount.
miles
of
and miles and miles and miles.
So, you know, maybe we'd have corn and then solar, and then corn and then solar, which I think.
And that there's a lot of hidden valleys in Vermont where they could put up solar. It's,
Well,
it's happening
the
as
other
we
thing,
speak.
yeah, the other thing too is that if you look at what's happening in the rest of the world, when solar power goes in the UK, like as not, the fields where it's put in, when it goes into fields, are agricultural, and they continue to be agricultural